When the emperor had completed his toilet and prepared to leave his apartment, he took his hat, which the first valet handed to him, in his left hand. This hat of black beaver, without border or lace, ornamented only with a small tricolored cockade attached to a loop of black silk, was supplied by Poupart and Co. Palais du Tribunal, and cost 60 francs. 4 were to be bought yearly, and each was to last 3 years. It was broad, of a comparatively soft beaver, and the crown was lined with quilted satin. In spite of this, it had still to be stretched before the emperor, whose head was extremely sensitive, could wear it. This headdress must have been singularly inconvenient, for when it had been exposed for a long time to the rain, the beaver got soaked, and the flaps before and behind fell on his face and shoulders. But yet Napoleon was constant to it. It was his special distinction, and everyone knew him by it. It was only about the year 1802 that he adopted it, at the time when Isabey painted his portrait on foot at Malmaison. As long as the concert lasted, no doubt he used it only on campaign and in private on state occasions. He had an embroidered hat without plume. During the Empire, he had a sort of leaning for a brass helmet gilt. One at least was to be found in his wardrobe. In private clothes, he wore a round hat, but it may be affirmed that he only wore private clothes on very rare occasions for expeditions incognito. Thus, at the Tuileries, he had no other hat than his petit chapeau. But on the other hand, he always had it either in his hand or on his head whenever he went from one room to another. He took it by the front flap, often waved it about in conversation. When he was angry or wished to appear so, he threw it on the ground and kicked it with his foot. After his hat, the emperor received from his valet de chambre a handkerchief on which some eau de cologne was poured, which he placed to his lips, then to his forehead, and passed lightly over his temples. This handkerchief was of very fine lawn, marked like all the linen supplied by Mademoiselles Lolive and de Bavary, with a crowned end. A few had printed borders of different colors. They cost invariably 12 francs each. Napoleon then took an eyeglass of bonbonniere, in which was licorice mixed with aniseed and a snuff box. He never left his room till he had stowed away these different things in the pockets of his uniform. This habit was so well known to those around him that it's evil if he felt about fruitlessly in one of his pockets without finding what he wanted. The maitre d'hotel rushed off and at once brought back the desired article. "Why, Dunan," said to the emperor to him one day, "you must be a sorcerer, always to know what I've forgotten." "Sire," replied Dunan, "I have noticed that your majesty always has his pocket handkerchief in the right pocket and his snuff box in the left pocket." The pocket eyeglasses, which were supplied by Leribourg, the celebrated optician of the Place du Pont Neuf, measured 18 to 21 lines, cost from 80 to 220 francs, and were usually of silver gilt. Although Napoleon was infinitely less short-sighted than his brother Lucien and Jerome, he still had short sight, and had the constant habit, not only at campaign but at Paris, of using an eyeglass or a binocular. The bonbonniere were little round boxes of crystal or tortoiseshell mounted in gold, some with a portrait, that of Madame Mère or Queen Caroline. The licorice was cut or rather broken up into extremely small pieces, so as to simply to perfume the mouth and the melt at once without blackening the saliva. It was the only indulgence he allowed himself, and this was a perfume. As to his snuff boxes, Napoleon had them of all kinds, which were presented to him by the Pope, the Sultan, the Empresses Josephine and Marie Louise, his mother, his sisters-in-law, Catherine and Julie, and his sister Caroline. Some of those in the wardrobe dated from the earliest times of the consulate, for he preserved small objects of this kind to which any recollection or association was attached. The snuff box, which he carried in Italy, will be remembered, the lid of which was adorned with a portrait of his Josephine, as well as the superstitious fear he experienced when he broke the glass of it in Messidor year 4. While still in Italy, he lost the snuff box, and at once wrote to Josephine, "I beg you to choose rather a flat one for me, and to have something pretty inscribed on the top of your hair." Throughout his life, he never made use of sumptuous snuff boxes studded with diamonds cut out of rare stones or carved at great expense. Those which he preferred were oval snuff boxes, narrow, with hinges of tortoiseshell, or even wood, lined with gold and ornamented with cameos or antique coins. For example, An oval snuff box, long, a tortoise shell lined with gold, ornamented with 4 silver medals representing Regulus, Sylla, Pompey, and Julius Caesar. An oval snuff box, a tortoise shell lined with gold, with a medallion painted by Isabey representing the King of Rome, another with the portrait of Marie Louise, which was sent to him from Vienna at the time of the marriage, were in common use. This idea of the medals is not a mere chance. It would seem that he wished to have his models, the great leaders of nations, constantly before his eyes. Alexander, Peter the Great, Charles the 12, Charles the 5th, Francis the 1st, Frederic the 2nd, Augustus Caesar, and Napoleon, as well as founders of dynasties, Demetrius, Peleus, Antiochus, Mithridates, Phraates II, and Constantine.